This is the ultimate Purrely deck list. In this video, I'm going to give you the whole deck list, and in a separate video, I'm going to teach you and show you how to side deck with this full deck list that's ready to compete with in a YCS, in a regional, or even in your locals. I'm Jake Quinsee. I have 60 plus regional wins, 30 plus premier tops, and I'm a coach on Metafy. I spent a lot of time on this deck list. I do think it's very good in the current meta game, and with YCSs being announced left, right, and center now, I reckon this deck will be quite strong even post ban list. I really do think this deck list is the way to go with Purrely. It's 40 cards, it's very clean, it has answers for everything, and I really do think this is the ultimate Purrely deck list. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. Here we go. So I'm going to explain my card choices and the reasoning behind each card, so it makes it easy for you to understand why I'm going with this decision and why I'm playing these cards for the tournaments that are coming up. It will make it much easier for you to understand the side decking part of it if you watch this full video, the reasoning why behind each card. Some of them you might know already if you're quite experienced with Purrely, but if you're a newcomer to the deck, I recommend watching this whole video throughout. Okay guys, so it's a 40 card deck list, and to simplify it, I'm going to go straight into the Purrely cards. So we have the 3 Purrely monsters, and then the 3 Purrely lilies. These ratios aren't going to change. You definitely want to max out on these so we can always draw a higher frequency of the cards. Then we're playing 3 Sleepy Memory, 1 Delicious Memory, 3 Happy Memory, and 3 Pretty Memory. We're playing all the 10 quick play spells. Now you have to play all 10. We would play more if we could. These are essential to the deck. If we don't play enough quick play spells, then the deck will be inconsistent and lack consistency, and that's just something we can't afford. And then for the other Purrely cards, we are playing 3 My Friend Purrely, 3 Purrely Street, and then we're deciding to play 1 Purrely Leap. And we're not playing 2. The reason why we're not playing 2, you don't really need to play 2 anymore because of Noir and how easy it is to be able to set it up. So because the game is so fast right now, you don't want to be having multiple cards in your deck that could affect the pace of the game, if that makes sense. So if we're playing more of these, we'd only want to play multiple copies in a slower format where games are taking 3 to 4 to 5 turns. But in this current format, the game is usually decided by turn 2. So we can't really afford playing multiple copies of these. This is the Purrely lineup. Now this lineup will never change. It will always stay the same. And if it's easier for side decking as well, this lineup will never change when it comes to siding. So those are the Purrely cards. Next we have 3 Ash Blossoms and 3 Draw and Lockbird. So the reason why I'm playing Ash, this card is probably one of the best cards right now. It's very versatile against multiple decks. It hits them quite strongly. And if you save it and use it at the right time, the card is great. The card can be quite weak against certain matchups, however, it can trade quite well against that type of deck. And ultimately then, because this type of deck can actually just discard cards when we don't need them, we could just discard our Access Ash Blossoms when we draw multiple cards through Sleepy Memory. And yeah, so I like the card very much. You definitely want to play this card, and same with Drawbird. Drawbird now is better than Nibiru. The reason why is because it slows down your opponent's turn. And ideally with this deck, you just want to stun your opponent for the turn. The next turn, you can set up a big Gnaw up, or you can just OTK them. Or you can even set up a big Zeus. If you just stun them and you're able then to commit cards to the board when you go second, it's literally game over. And then if you go first and you set up a Noir and you're drawing multiple cards through Sleepy Memory, you're bound to hit into a Drawbird. So then you can stun your opponent when they go second in the game, and then you should be able to win the game and then your second turn. Then we're playing 3 Book of Moon. This card's essential. You have to play this card right now in this meta game. Card's very good for this deck as well, because you benefit when you put monsters face down and attack into them with Happy. So with Purrely Happy, you can just keep searching cards, make a big Noir, and usually win the game. Book of Moon's very strong. It's very versatile. Kashtira is very dominant in the meta game. So usually if your opponent special summons like a unicorn, and then you just flip Book of Moon straight away on it, they usually are going to pass their turn. They're going to struggle to be able to commit to the board unless they have Birth, where they can then normal summon another Kashtira monster, and then if they have Theosis, yeah, but the maths of them having that is quite low. So the probability of that is low. Book of Moon's great right now in this format. It's very good in this deck. And also against skill drain, for example, if you want to make a big Zeus, and use Zeus's effect, detach 2 while skill drains face up, you can then book a moon the Zeus so it's face down, so it will still resolve because it's not face up in the field. So then you'll clear the skill drain, and then this basically acts as like back row removal. We are then playing just one Book of Eclipse. And the reason why we're playing one Book of Eclipse is, yes, it adds addition to the probability of drawing into one when we're playing 3 books as well, but it's mainly because of Crossout Designator. Now, I built this deck purely around this card. This card is very good for the deck, and I'm going to explain multiple reasons why. Dimensional Barrier is a problem. When you go second with this deck post sideboard, so game 2 and 3, you really are going to struggle playing this deck when you get Dimensional Barriered. Now, if you cross out it when you go second, you can freely play, and usually you can actually win the game. Also, what's really nice with this deck, when you play against the mirror and you're going second, and your opponent set up a baby noir up, and they draw multiple cards and then they flip the trap, go cross out that designator on your trap. So then your opponent can't make a big noir, and then you can just set up the board, and you're making a big noir anyway because of happy Purrely happiness. So you're making a big noir, so you never need this to make the big noir at all. So you usually win from this point. So crossout makes the mirror match really nice game 1 when you lose the dice roll, because usually in the mirror match whoever goes first wins, well, most of the time anyway. So this just literally gives you more ways to win. And the fact that you're playing the 4 books on top of it against the mirror match, you've got 7 cards to draw into when you go second. So the probability of that is very, very high. So in the mirror match, you should usually win when you go second. And if you go first, you should usually win anyway. Then we're playing 1 talent. Now, the reason why you want to play 1 talent in every single deck is it's not going to be a bad card when you see it. The reason why playing multiple copies can be quite bad for you is because they can make your hand unplayable. And if you have an unplayable hand, then the first talent won't be able to play because you can't even play yourself, which means your opponent can't activate a monster effect in the main phase, so you can't benefit from it. This card on its own, you can't break by drawing another copy, but it's always going to be good going first and going second, because when you go first, you can have a draw 2 cards or look at your opponent's hand, and when you go second, you can have a draw 2 cards or take your opponent's monster. It's going to be very good. The card should be in every single deck if you're not playing it, just 1 copy. Card's broken, it's very strong, it'll win you a lot of games. The only thing that comes down to it is your decision making and which effect to use. Now, I really like to look at my opponent's hand when I go first, and I really like to take a monster when I go second. I very rarely use this card to draw 2 cards, unless I want to force out an Ash Blossom from my opponent before I play my Purrely quick play spell. So just keep that in mind when you're deciding what effect to use with this, because it's really important. And then for the last 3 cards, we're playing a single Nibiru. Now, some players are still playing Nibiru in this format, and with Crossout, there is many lines where you can set up 2 XYZ monsters where you can get Nibiru'd. So you kind of want to have Nibiru in the main deck just because of Crossout. And then we're playing 1 Ghost Mourner. Ghost Mourner's seen a lot of play in Kashtira. Some Purrely players are playing it now. So the card's horrible to play against when you're trying to play around Drawbird in the draw phase. So if let's say you go Sleepy Memory, discard, summon your Purrely Lily, and they Mourner it on the effect, you're going to have a very hard time being able to play because you're already down to 3 cards in your hand. So now you need another name in your hand. You've already used the Purrely Lily's hard once per turn search effect, so you're not going to be getting your my friend Purrely, so you're going to be struggling from that point. So you have to play this card, and you always have to keep it in game 1 and game 2. But I'll explain that more in the side decking video. And then finally, we're playing 1 Impermanence. Same reasoning behind Mourner, because these 2 can be used in the draw phase, standby phase, and main phase, etc. Whereas Effect Veiler can only be used during the main phase. So ideally what we're trying to do with this deck is we're trying to play around Drawbird, because a lot of decks are maining draw now with Pretty Memory, by using Pretty Memory, find it, and Sleep Memory in the draw phase. So this is the 40 card main deck. Very clean. As you can notice, there's not any Pot of Prosperities in here, One, because a lot of players haven't got the opportunity to get the hold of the card. And two, you kind of don't really want it. I mean, you do want it for consistency. Now, you could cut a Book of Moon maybe to play a Pot of Prosperity, or you can add 2 Prosperities in by cutting 1 Book of Moon to go to 41. That's an option. That's something I would maybe consider if you have Prosperities. But if you don't have them, then no problem. You don't need them. Okay, so we're going to go with the extra deck now. So we're playing 1 Noir. We don't need 2 of these. The format's too fast to have multiple of these. Originally, I did think we needed 2. But as the format progressed, I only think we need 1. If the format becomes slower and we're playing 2 traps, we're going to want to play 2 of these. 1, because we're going to be able to set up with Noir by setting the trap. But also later in the game, we're then going to be able to discard a card and bounce up to 2 cards your opponent controls, which is going to be really game ending for your opponent, and then you can make a Zeus on top of that. Then we're playing 1 Plum. You don't need multiple copies of this card. Then we're playing 2 Beauties. Have to play 2 Beauties. Card's really strong. Same with Happiness. You need to play 2 of these. These cards, well, especially Happiness. Happiness is just broken. You're gonna find yourself summoning multiple copies of this, and maybe same with Beauty, especially if you go first. But if you go second, you're less likely to make a second one when you go second in this deck, because you're always going to be making Happiness usually. Then we're playing 2 Noirs, the big ones. You could look at playing potentially 3. We are playing the trap. However, though, if we find ourselves in the mirror match banishing the trap through Crossout Designator, we then are going to find we're going to be wanting to play 3 of these if the frequency of play of the mirror matches being present in a big event occurs. So what I mean by that is, if Purrely is everywhere and it's one of the most played deck like Kashtira currently is, then we might want to look then at playing a 3rd Noir. Then we are playing 1 Slacker Magician, 1 Downer Magician, 2 Big Zeus. The links, we're playing Anima, we're playing Azalea. And for a new card that I haven't been playing recently, I've added it in because it makes more sense, even though we're playing a lot of spells and traps in this deck, because we had to up the count because we're playing Crossout Designator. I'm not playing Princess Sprite. I figured at the point where you want to resolve Princess Sprite, it's either you're going to lose anyway unless you hit a certain name, or you've already won by that point. I don't really like the idea of the card. I'd rather have more interruption against my opponent. So I went with Assemblu Robin. Now, what this card does is you just need 2 level 2, where you can have plus, it gets 2 plus level 1 monsters, generic. When your opponent special summons a monster, you can detach a material from this card, and then you can bounce one of those, I believe. Is it 1? Yeah, then you can target one of those special summon monsters and return it to the hand. So it's going to be really hard to deal with a Beauty and this, or a Noir with the trap and this, because if they have Book of Moon, then they're forced to either book this on the trap and then deal with the hand traps in your hand, because you've already drawn a few cards from this, or they're forced to then Book of Moon this. And if they Book of Moon this, then you're going to win with these 2. So I really like the idea of this. And that's another reason why I'm playing Nibiru in the main deck, because I like to set this line up quite frequently if I can. So I just have to keep Nibiru in the deck list, and it has to be there because some players are playing Nibiru still. So this is the 15 card extra. The thing is about Slacker Magician as well, if some of you don't know, because Book of Moon is everywhere, you want to play this in your deck list. The reason is, when you make it, it can't be destroyed by battle once. So you can just attack into an attack position monster. You take damage, no problem. But if it gets targeted, you can detach a material and then you can negate it. So you're going to have 2 materials underneath it. This is going to be the 3rd one. You're going to attack. They're going to book it. You're going to detach, negate it. Then the attack's been successful. And then you can just make a Zeus and then use Zeus, detach, nuke the board. And then you can start setting up your baby Noir to the big Noir. So I definitely recommend playing Slacker Magician. There's only 1 printing right now, so it's fairly expensive. But I definitely recommend getting one if you can. Okay, now the side deck. So I'm playing 1 Dimension Shifter. The card's insane. Kashtira is very popular. And even Vanquish Soul is playing this card. We need a way to be able to stop and prevent this card being able to resolve. So you have to side one of these cards in because you're playing 3 crossouts. Now, if we do draw it, in fact, the cool thing about this deck again is you can just discard the card with one of your quick play spells. The downside to crossout designator is you have to have the target in your deck to be able to negate the effect and to banish the card. So yes, you don't want to play more than one, just one. It's again because of space. But yeah, you definitely want to see this card. You definitely want to play this card. Then we have double Nibiru's. It's so against combo decks and even against Kashtira, we've got more ways now to disrupt our opponent when we go second. So Nibiru is very strong, and if we find that we don't need to use it when we go second against our opponent, again, we just discard it. Next, we have Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion. Now, you have to play this card in this current format just because of the popularity of Branded and mainly Labyrinth. Labyrinth is an issue. So if you tie 3 of these with 3 Ash Blossoms against Labyrinth, it's really nice. And you're going to prevent your opponent being able to summon one of the big Labyrinth ladies. So yeah, I recommend playing this for sure. Card's very nice. Definitely play it. Then we're going to go with 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. Now, I did contemplate maining this card, and you could potentially play it. But I opted by siding this and maining the Book of Eclipse instead. So I put this in the side. Card's very strong. If you know your local scene and you know what type of decks are played there, you might want to add this into the main deck rather than side it. But if you know there's loads of combo decks, you probably just want to keep this in the side deck. Then we have 3 Cosmic Eclipse. Again, this is just for Labyrinth, and for control decks. Even Runic, very strong. Definitely would recommend playing 3 of these. Card's really good. It's very punishing. Once you get rid of the Runic Fountain as well, it's banished, so Jerry can't add it back from the graveyard. That's the fusion monster that summons from the Runic spell. So, card's definitely really strong. Definitely would play it. Then we have the traps. 3-dimensional barrier. Now, this card is disgustingly broken. This card should be banned. If you want to see my ban list prediction video, it's one of my previous videos. I'll leave it in the description below. I mentioned this card should get banned. I hope it does. The card's very strong. This card is very good when you go first. You always want to side this card going in first because you're going to be able to deal with most decks in the format. Obviously not Labyrinth. You wouldn't side this against Labyrinth. The thing is, it can hit fusions, it can hit synchros, it can hit XYZs, and there's very few link decks right now in the format. Yes, Salamangreat and Cyverse, they're very strong decks, but they're not very popular. So this card is very dominant in the format. You definitely want to side at least one copy into your deck list when you go second, because you want to be able to cross out Designator when you play against pretty much every deck. So you're always going to put one of these into your side deck. Now, another really cool fact is if you side one copy and you go second in a 40 card deck, there's a 15% chance of you opening this in 6 cards if you just side one copy. So 15% of the time, your cross out Designator is going to be dead against, well, if you open this and you have cross out as well, so the probability of having cross out is different, but if you have cross out in your hand and this in your hand, then you're going to see this 15% of the time, and it's going to be a problem then being able to cross out designate your opponent. However, if you play a second copy in your deck when you go second, now I probably wouldn't recommend this in other decks when you play cross out designator, but because this is Purrely and you can discard the card when you go second, it's okay. It's fine. But because basically you need to prevent your opponent being able to resolve this card and call XYZs, or otherwise you're going to lose the game there and then. So what you want to do is when you play 2, the probability goes down from 15% to 1.92% to see both copies in your opening 6 in a 40 card deck. So yeah, you might want to side 2 of these. But again, I'll explain this in the siding video. Then we've got 1 Eradicator Virus. Now, Eradicator can be a problem. Even though our cards are quick play spells, Eradicator can still be a problem. So if we're playing against Labyrinth and they commit multiple cards to Eradicator Virus, and then we just cross out Designate Eradicator Virus, we're in a very, very good position. So definitely side one of these. And then finally, I've got IP Masquerena in the side deck. Now, why is this in the side? The reason is Contact C is becoming very, very popular. And pretty much every Purrely player doesn't have an out to it in their extra deck. But Contact C isn't going to be in your opponent's main deck. So you don't need to have a spot for this in the extra deck right now, only post side decking. So in the side decking video, I'll explain what cards you should be siding out. But you always are going to want to put this into your deck list, into your main deck, post sideboard for game 2 and 3 every single time. Because if you get Contact Seed, you're going to lose. It's very popular. The only deck that's maining Contact C, or I recommend the deck that should be maining it, I made a video on this, it's called Vanquish Soul. Because it's an Earth, it adds value to the deck list, and even if your Contact C is bad against the deck you're playing against, it's still an Earth, so it adds value to the deck that what you're trying to do. So this is the deck profile. I hope you like it. Good luck. Let me know how you do. Let me know in the comments how you do if you're going to take this to a tournament. There's multiple YCSs coming up. There's regionals have just started, so a lot of players are doing the Worlds race and grinding. If you are playing Purrely, definitely take this to your tournament. Let me know how you do. And guys, I'll see you in the side decking video soon. Peace.